sometimes it's going to feel like your ex is quote unquote winning. But at the end of the day, who actually cares if he or she wins, if there's more peace for you and your kids?
I'm Amanda Silver.
And I'm Alex Howard.
And this is Dirty Laundry. On today's episode of Dirty Laundry, we have Melissa Kalil, who is also known as Shrinking Divorce on Instagram. She is a coach and also on her way to becoming a therapist. So welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So you're living in Chicago now.
Yep.
What brought you there?
At the time I was married and my ex-husband's role brought us to Chicago. We'd been in New York City for many years.
Okay. Oh,
yeah. So my family my kids were all born in New York City but my family's kind of congregated in the North Carolina area. So they're all there, but I'm here now, with my girls.
Nice. You've got 2 girls?
Three girls. Yeah.
How old? I feel like that's a lot of estrogen.
It is. Trust me. The oldest is 11 and it's a ton of hormones and it's tough.
Yeah.
11, 8 and 5.
Wow. That's so fun though. I have 2 older sisters and it's the best. Yeah.
It is. And I was one of 3 girls. And then I also have a brother that we love, but he's much younger than us. So I grew up with sisters and then my brother came along, but I think 3 girls is an awesome.
It is fun.
Yeah. I'm from 3 girls and a boy.
Yeah.
So.
3 girls and a boy
really?
too. Actually, all of us. That's funny.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Where is the boy in your age groups?
Mine, he is number 2.
Mine's youngest.
Okay. Yours is the youngest. My brother as well. That's so funny.
So funny.
And you don't hear much about people having so many kids these days. It really is.
Unless it's like a blended family.
True.
Which is different.
Which we see
like
a lot
from
now.
one family.
Yeah.
Yeah. 4 is a little less common these
but
days.
so fun now as an adult. I love having all of these siblings and their partners and the kids, like all of these wild cousins getting together.
Yeah, the cousins. It's so nice. It's so nice.
So magical.
For me, yeah, that was like key because I grew up with a big extended family and had like 21 cousins. So I wish, my kids have cousins and they love them. We don't live, unfortunately, there because we're in Chicago, but they're still so close to their cousins. And my siblings and I are literally just best friends. So I'm very fortunate to have that support. A lot of people don't, and I just take for granted that I have that,
Yeah. And so your divorce, your sort of personal journey kind of got you into the work that you're doing then.
Yeah.
So tell us more about that. What you're a coach, what are you doing?
Okay. So, so basically during my divorce, COVID had just hit and was hitting. And so I kind of went to quarantine with my sister in a small part of Wilmington, North Carolina.
Wow.
Beautiful area called Figure 8 Island. And I would go for walks in the day and listen to podcast after podcast after podcast. And there was always divorce coaches leading these podcasts. I didn't see as many therapists, but there were always these divorce coaches that were hosting the podcast. And I just found it so, a mix of education, but also the emotional side, and the cognitive side, like how you're thinking about it and, how you're going into it. And I just found these people sort of became the background of my thinking at the time and just knowing that I can get through it. And because we were so isolated during COVID, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I discovered the concept of I'd always heard of a life coach, but specifically of a divorce coach. And so then I had a friend who ironically at the same time was hosting a podcast, was doing a lot of divorce coaching. And she took me on as a pro bono client. And I felt it was incredibly helpful. It was just very targeted, directive. And she really helped me with my confidence at the time. And my lawyer also would always say, Melissa, don't call me about this, call your coach because you're paying me X hundred an hour. You're going to speak to a coach for way less.
Yep.
So that's where I first discovered that this was a thing. And then I sort of dug deep into the different avenues of becoming a coach. And that's essentially how it evolved for me.
Yeah, that's brilliant. We find that a lot. People use their own experiences really to kind of launch a second career after divorce, whether it's because, you know, maybe they don't have the kids full time now and they've got a bit more time on their hands to kind of, you know, get re-educated and take a different road, or they just had, whether it was a good experience or a bad experience, it was something that was like, oh, I can do this and I can support others. And it sounds like your journey was very similar.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you find it difficult to kind of parse out your experience with theirs, or is it a bit of a blurred line, or does your own experience really help sort of navigate the way that you do your coaching?
So, interesting question. You know, self-disclosure is like the official term for that.
Yeah.
And coaches are able to self-disclose a little more than therapists. This is how I explain it to people. And I actually find that the self-disclosure helps clients a lot because they feel way less isolated and they know it means obviously you've been there before.
Yeah.
You do have to be a few chapters ahead of them, obviously, as a coach. But yeah, they definitely are always like, oh, interesting. And it sort of changes the relationship. Like they just see you more. It creates a lot more like openness between you and the client. Typically, as a therapist, you discourage to do that. You can self-disclose as a therapist, but it's got to be very intentionally done. And it's also very intentionally done as a coach. Typically, it's like, here's what happened to me, and this is how I handle it. What can you take from that? So then you always try, you know, put it back on them and find out how that can maybe help them, or if they can glean anything from your self-disclosure.
Yeah. And you mentioned coaching being like a really, I think what the word you used was like directive and intentional. So can you give us some examples of what that looks like, practically speaking?
Yeah. I mean, so for example, like, you know, a coach is going to understand the basics of divorce, like what a guardian ad litem is, you know, what a custody evaluation would look like, what a motion is with the court.
Right.
So just being able to sort of speak that language and provide a little bit of education. Like, obviously, we're not lawyers, so we're definitely not providing any legal advice, but we can at least say, okay, so here's what a guardian ad litem is going to do versus a custody evaluation, or here's what it means if your lawyer wants to file a motion. And so like with all of those comes thoughts, comes fears, comes emotion. And typically the best way to combat that is with a little bit of education. And so that's kind of like how the coaching piece is very directive, very targeted. With a therapist, you know, let's be honest, most divorce coaches get there, like we've just discussed, because we've been divorced ourselves. So we've been through it before. Not every therapist is specializing in divorce. Some of them are these days, but typically, you know, I find they don't necessarily understand a lot of what's actually going on the legal side. And so you oftentimes feel a little bit like sort of left out, you know, sort of left out there, as opposed to with a coach where like they just get it because they've been there before.
Yeah.
And do you find your clients are coming to you in the early stages of their sort of separation? I mean, I know the States, the laws are a little bit different, but here that you have to wait at least a year. So the separation period is a year. I know in the States it can be a bit quicker. But
it's different, but depending on the states. Yeah. But typically it's all over. Like I have some clients that are, you know, should I stay, should I go? And then there's some clients that have like been divorced already for a couple of years. So I would get the full spectrum. And every one of those obviously looks very different, right? So it's very different if you're working with someone that's in a should I stay, should I go versus someone that's like trying to heal from their divorce.
And are you helping them? Of course, there's the healing process and there's the information process, but are you also helping them with communicating with their ex? Because I know that that's something that at least I've encountered with some of my clients is that's a big issue, is how to communicate, how to send an email about an issue, how to raise an issue, because, you know, your initial reaction is to write something that's not going to be received so well. And so having a coach to sort of filter it out, write it in a more professional way that you know that it can be used in court. So do you find that that's something you encounter as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. And all coaches, like I'll say this, you know, I'm sure you guys know this, we all have our own coaches, right? So I've learned a thing or two from my coach helping me weed out stuff that may be inflammatory and may not go down well and is, you know, elicits too much emotion. So then that also makes me better at helping other people, I've had some clients want to send like letters and asking me, should they send the letter and what should be in the letter? And then I help either just bring it back down to the bare bones facts, or be like, really, what are you looking for and sending this? What's it going to do for you? What is the outcome that you actually want deep down?
Yeah.
So
I love
that
like goal setting.
Because sometimes I think it's just, they want to vent.
Exactly.
They're feeling very emotional about a situation that happened. And sometimes they get enough by just maybe venting to a support person, and they don't need to send the letter.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard. It's still hard not to. Still takes a lot of discipline not to, but there's definitely like a cathartic effect, right, in writing the letter and having somebody read it and feel like you're being heard and validated. I think that's a huge piece of it as well. And then it's like training yourself that discipline, to not shoot something off, especially to somebody that you condition to reacting that way to. You're so used to it. That's the pattern, the marital dance that you had. And so you're going to fall back into that. And it's going to take somebody actively saying, do you really need to send that? Like, let's reprogram how you would typically do something. It didn't work, obviously. So like, let's try something different.
Yeah. It's creating new habits. I remember I was working with a couple, actually. I worked with both, coaching them. And it was like, they're like, this feels so weird. Even little things like, just use I statements, or like whatever, little tip and trick we're giving. Like, this feels so weird. This feels so weird. I'm like, that means you're doing it right. Because your old way was not working.
Was not working.
Yeah, it led you
Don't
here
default to how you were communicating at the end of your marriage. You have to communicate in a new way.
Yeah, and it's all about rebuilding new habits, new, sort of techniques and strategies. And so when you were working with your coach through your divorce, was that something that you were utilizing as well and saying, okay, good, this is my sounding board. This is kind of my...
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I studied, and I still study a ton of, I'm sure you've heard of Biff and, Bill Eddy and the High Conflict Institute. Like, those are the big names out there. And like, he's got a lot of great frameworks to help you with those communications. And I mean, it's so true, right? Something as simple as just boiling something down to the bare bones facts and leaving out emotion makes a huge difference. And I think it's like kind of what you said, you want to put the emotion in there and you want to really like go,
stick it to them.
But actually, it's quite empowering when you realize you don't have to do that. And you can actually, like they say, I hate this phrase, but like, you don't have to attend every fight you're invited to or something like that. You don't have to. And then that's where you get your control and your power back. Now, I'm not saying I'm perfect by any means, right? Like, I am still learning this as well, but it's over time, again, new habits. And so over time, you realize you can actually be quite efficient and just shutting it down. There's a ton of coaches as well that have these canned phrases that I find incredibly helpful. Just have them print it out, choose one, put it in a, email in such a way that like you are acknowledging the email, you are addressing what you need to, but you're shutting down any further need for conflict.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And now you're sort of on the other side of your own divorce. You're having even more lived experiences that you can then, offer to folks that you're supporting from the other side. As you said, I love that. You have to be a couple chapters ahead.
I like
That's a perfect way of saying it. Because, one of the biggest issues when we divorce is now you're co-parenting. Like, this person is never really out of your life, and you have to learn those strategies of how do you deal with them.
Right.
And so what does that look like for you personally, if you're open to sharing?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's just focusing on I know it sounds so trite, but it really is focusing on the kids and yourself. I mean, that's really how I feel people get through it. I think it's so hard. I just posted a reel about this, I think it was yesterday, to not compare yourself to everyone else around you, including your family or your ex or, your friends. But I just encourage people to focus right back on their own goals and their own life. That's kind of when you need to do it more, right? Because when you focus on that, you take steps to get more of that. So to get more of the positive results in your life. So for me, I really made it a mission to try and give my kids a happy childhood despite what happened, and focus on my own parenting and studying this stuff. I think that's really where, what I used is just, use it as a platform to really study how to help kids through divorce. And so I try my best to stay in my lane, and to not, to not try to create conflict where not necessary. But I always do keep in mind that I'm keeping my kid's best interest at heart, which sometimes does mean picking the fight, right? Or addressing the thing that you don't agree with. So it doesn't mean there's no conflict ever. It just means, knowing your values, knowing what's important to you in terms of your kids.
And how to deal with those conflicts when they come up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they're going to come up. You could have the most low conflicts, amicable divorce, but there's going to be conflicts as there would be if you were married still.
Totally. That's exactly
what you're co-parenting.
Yeah.
So it's how do you deal with them? How do you communicate them so that you don't inflame the matter?
Exactly.
And sometimes you need some help with that.
Yeah, and I think like if there's an easy give, right, or an easy way to be nice or amicable, then do it, because there's going to be a lot of times where exactly pick your battles. There's going to be a lot of times where you are going to pick the battle. So when you don't have to, try and really step back, because it's also just more peaceful for your own life. Really, it's about letting go of a lot of stuff that you were kind of like it was the hill you were going to die on before, and really thinking about is that really going to be the hill I'm going to die on?
Yeah. And for a lot of folks, my number one question usually is do you actually care about this issue, or is this more of a control thing? Because you know what? It doesn't really matter if when your kids are at your ex's, they're eating Fruit Loops every morning. They're going to be fine. I lived off of Joe Louis and Dunkaroos because it was the 90s, but the kids are going to be fine. What's the actual reason why you're picking this battle? Kind of getting to the root of that need or that value that's not being met, or, any of that, because I control is a big one,
It is. I like to tell my clients, or I like to think about this myself, is something that's going to bother me in 5 years? In 5 years from now, right? I'm going to look back and be like, no, I didn't care about the Fruit Loops or the whatever. And that I think really helps, put things in perspective.
That right there is key. And a coach will always, typically, if you sign up for any kind of coaching, one of the exercises they'll always have you do is a values exercise. I'm sure you guys know this, because just knowing your values helps you actually know what your negotiables and non-negotiables are. So one of the things I'll have people do is write a negotiable and a non-negotiable list, because that right there, right, you're right, we get hung up on something. And I found myself, really tied to some very important things that I will fight, I will take up with, someone, whether it's an ex or in a work situation. And then there's some things where, and then, you have to really think about boiling it down. Is this so important to me that it's worth this fight? And there are actually very few things that are that crucially important, right? And sometimes, here's another really big golden nugget, right? Sometimes it's going to feel like your ex is quote unquote winning. But at the end of the day, who actually cares if he or she wins, if there's more peace for you and your kids? Sometimes them winning actually may mean your life is going to be a lot easier, and then you actually win. So that's the thing. The control is a big piece of it too.
And also, let's be honest, who's keeping score?
Everyone who's been divorced.
Well, there you go. Right. Just show that I'm the only divorced in the room.
In the perfect world, people wouldn't be keeping score, but it does happen.
Really?
Right?
It's human nature.
I think it's human nature. It's I can't always be the one to give in, or they got the extra day, then I want it this time. And so it does, it creeps up on you.
Okay. Well, good to know.
You need to sort of just, like you said, maybe the winning is actually what they don't see, which is I've let go of this.
Yeah.
You think you've won, but I've let go of this. I'm now moving on, doing something else. My focus is not that. I'm sleeping through the night tonight because I am not thinking about this anymore.
Yeah.
And that is the winning.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's a lot of freedom in that. I mean, definitely something's a huge issue. I'm not advocating that you sell your soul or you give up on your values. That's one area, but that's about knowing, what those lines are. It's really important.
And there's going to be so many of them.
Yeah. Like your mental health.
Yeah, you gotta just let things go, which is so hard to do.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So I love this non-negotiable list. What other sort of, quick strategies maybe could our listeners benefit from that you use, tools and sort of easy tips and tricks?
Another really huge thing that comes up a lot is decision making. Okay. And I love to tell people I was the worst. I still am I was the worst decision maker. I still have to actively work on my decision making sort of tactics, because I do tend to overthink. And I think I was speaking to a client about this actually just, I don't know, it was yesterday. I think often as women, we've kind of been socialized to really think we lose, we were sort of for so long, we're like the, like inferior gender.
Yeah.
And so a decision held a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And so we're so used to, I see this a lot, like it's usually the woman that's the one the wife, sorry, the female. And I know I'm being very gender, typical now, but just generally speaking, in a heterosexual couple, the wife is often the one that's can't make a decision and is like sort of spinning their wheels and wants everything perfect. And the husband typically is going to be a little more like, okay, let's make a decision and like, stick with it, move on. And we want to talk things through and talk things through.
It's emotion
so I think
attached.
We generally have a hard time. There's so many little decisions in a divorce, right? And life after divorce. And so one of the things when I went through my coach training and when I worked with the coach was just how to make a decision. Because we all want to wrap things up in pretty bows and know we're going to make the right decision. And sometimes you actually have to think about how you're even labeling things. Like, is something going to be the right decision or a mistake, or is it actually a social construct that we label and we make up in our heads? So much of it is just education around decision making that I find is very helpful. For me, that had an incredible effect, just learning these skills. And so for other clients, that's a huge way. It's just like a huge thing. Oh, this makes so much sense, but I never thought of it that way before.
Yeah. One of our colleagues always says, "Done is better than perfect."
Right? Exactly.
And sometimes you just need to make a decision.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like one of my coaches in my training program, when he tells us to do social media or like put something out there, he's like, go for B- work. Go for B- work. It's
get it out there.
And that's really hard for some of us that are perfectionists, right? Like we want to make it absolutely perfect. And then what ends up happening? You don't end up doing anything. You're just sitting and listen, like cycle.
Yeah.
So that happens obviously in divorce, right? Because there's so many decisions you have to make, small and big. And so you can't just sit there forever spinning your wheels. You're just going to get the same negative energy as opposed to just making a decision and seeing what comes your way.
And I think that anyone who is a parent knows that when you're making decisions that impact your kids, it's not just, oh, I'll deal with the consequence of my decision. Right. This is now, oh goodness, these small people are relying on me to make the right choice for them. That's a lot of pressure. And so we do ruminate it. And I think you're right, especially as women, we have a tendency to sort of maybe overanalyze to the point where it's like paralysis by analysis, right? You end up just stuck in a place of fear.
Yeah.
It's like, again, the question, will this matter in 5 years time kind of thing? Like, let's really get real about the importance you're placing on this.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then it's like one of the things that, I think is so great about coaching. I was trained as a general life coach, right? So those are actually very tangible skills that you can teach somebody. So a lot of it is also just teaching, like, okay, you're going through a divorce right now, but you can use this going forward in your life, like a decision-making, worksheet or some questions that you can ask someone, not just for divorce, but in other contexts of their life. So that's what I find so helpful about the way I approach coaching is like, let's use our divorce, right? and I know it sounds maybe a little Pollyannish, but you can use your divorce to help you, take these skills further forward in your life.
And I would imagine too, by seeing, let's say your clients, by seeing you, their own coach, kind of come out on the other side and be thriving, it is this sort of beacon of hope, if you will.
Right. Obviously, it's great to be a role model and be, practicing what you're preaching. So I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, you have to behave because your mom is a coach. People are looking to see the fruits of her labor. And if you're going to melt down in public over, I don't know, having Starbucks or not, then what? I'm going to be out of a job.
Or you're just human like the rest of us.
Yeah, exactly.
The cobbler's kids don't wear shoes
don't
or
have any
something.
shoes. I know. And I always love Dr. Becky because she's like, sometimes I'm just a mom. I'm not always Dr. Becky. I screw up
Becky is
too.
always Dr. Becky.
I love her. She's got great advice. But we're humans. We're fallible. We're not going to be
perfect parents either.
Yeah. Not at all.
One of the things that Amanda and I have found in terms of the work that we do with divorce is just it can be really isolating. And I imagine for you as a coach, like just for your clients to know that they're not alone. Like not only are you professionally supporting them, but you have been through this.
Exactly.
It must immediately build rapport and trust and,
And that's sort of back to your first question, like why, the value of divorce coaching and what clients are, getting from it. And, we've been divorced before. So we've been through it. So that obviously brings down that feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm so alone in this. They still feel that way. But I mean, if just reminding them that there are others that have come through the other side and giving that hope and sort of a little bit of a pathway forward is it's very empowering, and it just reduces anxiety a lot.
Yeah. How long are you working with clients? Like, do you find that they sort of graduate from needing you? Or as we know, there's always new issues that come up when you are, for example, co-parenting. It doesn't just end once you sign the papers.
No, it's all over the show. Some clients, it just, a few sessions and they, get what they need. If it's a more short-term, like thing that they've come to coaching for. Other clients would work with me almost for a year or so. I've had some clients that have been with me for a year, depending, like sometimes their frequency will sort of wax and wane, like they'll need every week and then they're okay to do bi-weekly. And then, I mean, typically I would say a couple of months. And I like to say that I want to work myself out of a job because once they learn these skills, they should be able to do, ideally, they're going to be able to, help themselves going forward.
Yeah. And then they just sort of enter this like maintenance phase where all of a sudden their tool belt has run out and they need more.
Or something happens. I mean, like someone's in a crisis or like just something happens. There's been a life change and they need some support again.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like I've had some clients come back and just need a one session because they have a specific question around, what do you think of this for my, I'm thinking of proposing this kind of parenting plan. What do you think?
Yeah.
And so they'll just do a one-off session, even if they've worked with me in the past more frequently.
Right. Yeah. Because as our kids grow, obviously their needs change and therefore the issues, sort of grow and change with them.
Exactly. Yeah. So new stuff's coming up all the time, but I do, my goal is for them to be able to pull on a lot of the resources I provide and the coping skills that, I'm teaching them during coaching.
I noticed that you offer a free financial checklist. What's that about?
So I've recently I rebranded and I sort of work in collaboration now with a certified divorce financial analyst. And he likes to give these out to someone that's beginning the process or even after the process, because a lot of us came to our divorce not, sometimes, or most of the time I'm finding we're the one that was a less sort of financially astute spouse. And we know there's a lot of documentation to gather. And yes, you need it going into the divorce for the financial discovery and the financial affidavit, but oftentimes you need a lot of it going, after the divorce to just know what to start collecting and getting organized. So sometimes people are in such an emotional state, they don't really know what to look for. So just a little cheat sheet. And then also a lot of people are afraid that their spouses are starting to hide things, right? So this way it's like, notice what comes in the mail, start getting access to what you can right now, take screenshots of, whatever account, just any information you have, put it down and start collecting it, because that organization process can reduce the anxiety and help them feel like, okay, I'm doing something, because people want to feel like they're actually getting somewhere, right? So it's just a little cheat sheet to help, because there's a lot of organization that has to go on at the beginning.
I just had an episode about that and it's so overwhelming.
Totally. And as you say, education or information actually eliminates a lot of the anxiety, a lot of the stress, because we do make up stories, we fill in the gaps. in our brains.
Especially about finances. I've had so many clients who they think that there's these accounts and they're all there, and sometimes they're there. And sometimes they're not. You know, and so at least if you take more of an active role in your financial you know, situation, then you could feel a little bit more empowered going through the process.
Yeah. And then of course, like if you are starting the process and hiring a lawyer, the more information you have up front, the less you're going to, you know, the less hourly billing ideally you're going to spend with them doing that. So get as organized as you can. That's a huge part of coaching, right? Is to get organized, get educated, so you can actually reduce your legal fees. That's kind of almost why a large reason why the profession is taken off, because the legal fees are so high. So a coach is going to, you know, help you get organized on those practical fronts, and, you know, with also your emotions, rather than like spending that all on your lawyer.
I think I could have benefited from that, from someone keeping me at least accountable to getting those documents and keeping up with all this, because there's so much when you're going through it that you can, like, you put it off, and you don't want to go call the CRA, and you don't want to, or the tax, you know, you don't want to call the taxes whatever institutions. And but if you have a coach who's like, did you finish that? Is it done? You know, just keeping you accountable.
Accountability is a huge part of coaching. Huge. And it's not necessarily difficult work, because you're not doing any financial analysis yourself. It's just tedious. Like, it's just like
being on hold and registering things, and that stuff is exhausting.
It's painful, and people dread it. They really find it overwhelming. And so, you know, just a little cheat sheet, and, you know, a lot of the stuff won't apply, or a lot of the stuff will be you know, they may not have access to it, but anything you can find. I found this personally, I felt better about it when I actually went through everything and just had it in front of me, rather than just making up stories about what was going on and not having any firm grasp on it.
And once you get started, you realize it's actually not as bad as you imagined it to be. I always liken it to, like, it's tax season, but like on speed, you know, like it's just like and tax time sucks, getting all of the paperwork for that. It's like, we all know that already. So once you start, you're like, oh, okay, this is not that bad. Fill in this box, type in this number.
It's the anxiety of, like, starting that's often worse than the actual process.
Exactly. And that's actually why. So for a long time, when I did my coaching was just me doing, you know, divorce coaching, focusing more on like the practical stuff, like basics, and obviously the emotional piece and the parenting piece. But then I was noticing so many clients, just like their biggest fear is the money. Honestly, like, okay, parenting, but then let's be honest, money is like right up there with parenting. And there's this sort of idea or concept called the domino effect, which is like, you have one huge anxiety or one really difficult thought, and once you sort of process that and combat that and work through that, all your other anxieties and dominoes kind of come down, and you feel better about them. So I was like, I would love to work with a divorce financial analyst, so that my clients can have a session or two with him, even if they just do some education with him. And then I think their emotions will be in such a better place to really benefit from divorce coaching, because they've had that education, or they feel better about building a budget. So now I collaborate with him. And so when someone works with me, they can either work with me, they'll work with me for a session, and then they may go to him for a session or two, and, you know, bounce between the two of us, because the finances are just a huge piece of it. And I know the basics, but I'm definitely not a financial coach, and I don't feel comfortable veering into that lane. So I'm like, let me bring on an expert. And so he's fantastic, because he's just very calming. And he also brings a lot of, like, he's worked with so many clients as well. He's like, a lot of it is life coaching. And so he's doing a lot of the emotions come in with that as well. But the two really go together. And and that's why I felt it was so important to have him on board now.
Do you find in your practice, most of your clients are kind of running into the same issues? You know, we spoke earlier about how it's quite an isolating process, and we all think we're so alone in this, but really the commonalities, I find, are more than the differences. Are you experiencing that? What are some of the top things you're seeing and sort of battling, if you will?
Yeah, we're definitely more alike than we are different when it comes to divorce. The thing that I noticed the most, so the money thing was huge, right? Which is why I was like, let me have someone that I can send a client to. That's for sure. You know, it's just so salient in every session. The second thing is that I find with almost all of them is this feeling of like not being able to let go of one specific ruminating thought. And I usually find that a lot of clients struggle with the fact that they have a hard time coming to terms with they lived a lie in their marriage. Like this is something that comes up time and time again. They feel that their whole marriage was a lie. And how can they trust themselves or anyone else going forward when they lived for like, they were married for 20 years, married to this person for 20 years. And now like, he or she's changed and it's made them question everything about themselves. That comes up time and time again.
Yeah. What do they say? It's not that you're worried about, being able to trust a new partner. It's you're actually worried about being able to trust yourself.
Exactly. It's really hard. It's almost like an identity crisis. It's like, who was I? And then like, what does that mean about who I am now? And I can't trust myself to not that they're necessarily ready to date, but they just start questioning everything about themselves. And then, yes, of course, if they meet someone down the line, well, what if I do that again? Like, what if that happens again?
Well, and not to mention, like, let's not forget that when you get into a relationship, you're very different when you come out of it, right? So
exactly.
Your whole lived experience is you're a completely different person. You've grown, let's say, for your anecdote, 20 years. If I was the same person I was 20 years ago, I'd be terrified. Like that is unheard of. And so we often forget that, the last time I dated, I was a completely different person.
Right. And you wanted different things.
Reconciling that in your brain is a challenge of itself.
So you're not going to go after what you went for 20 years ago.
I mean, here's hoping.
I would think.
you would assume.
Your needs have changed, your interests have changed, you've changed.
Yeah. And so just like they thinking like, was this person living a lie? Well, we can't we're not going to sit here and postulate what was going on with the other person, right? But potentially just as much as you've changed as much as he or she has changed. Like, it's the same. Like you're not going to be going for the same things, and focus more on what your truth was. That's the thing. You got to keep bringing them back to like, what was your truth? Because at the end of the day, we're not going to get into his or her head. Yeah. We're not going to know what he or she was thinking all those years of marriage, but keep coming back to your truth. And that hope that is something to at least start with and build on in going forward.
Do you find that they also feel like, this is what I see sometimes with people that I speak with, they feel like it was like a waste. And I try and explain to them that it wasn't a waste. I wasted all that time. No, that time got you to where you are now.
I wasted the best years of my life.
I wasted the best years of my life, or I wasted 20 years in a marriage that ended up in divorce or whatever it is. But like, it's sort of to have them look at it from a different, reframe it to have them look at a different perspective. Like, no, that's what got you to where you are today.
Exactly.
It had value.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, then like, okay, so then, oftentimes when clients will say something like that, it's all about reframing. And then they kind of like, well, I'm like, are you buying it? Is this too Pollyannish or like toxic positivity for you? And the truth of the matter is, even if it is, it's going to get you a lot further than sitting and thinking like the last 20 years were a waste, because we just can't go back in time. Right. I mean, that was the thing that took me 40 years to understand, is that I can only control certain things. And it's the hardest thing. I mean, it's part of being an adult. I was just talking to this with a client earlier. Like, part of being an adult is just like understanding we want to control everything, but we can't. And so it's the same with that. Like, if it was a way, if it was a waste, even if it was a waste, so what? Okay, so now we're sitting where we are. Now what are we going to do with it? Like, a lot of it is peeling back what I call the layers of the onion. So what? So what? So what? And then so you get to the core issue and like, okay, so it was a waste. Now what? That's the radical acceptance piece. But ideally, reframing that thought that like, no, it wasn't a waste, because you wouldn't obviously be where you are today, and learning the lessons you've definitely learned at this stage.
Yeah. And what are you going to do? Waste more time
or live in the regret state? Like, that's not helpful.
Yeah, wasting again.
And that's not healthy
years.
for you.
Yeah.
That's not fair to you.
Yeah.
You owe yourself more than living in a regret.
And you're giving that person more power by staying in that. And that's like, regret. You're just giving the other person more power, and they've either moved on or they don't care, or what, it doesn't serve you to give them more power than they already have.
So do you find, so you're based in Chicago, are you working, I know, obviously family law, divorce law, it's different, wherever you're located. Does it matter for you if folks are local? Are you working with, people internationally? Because I want to like pump your tires and send our listeners to you. So,
great. Thank you. I've actually had international clients. I have, but it's mainly all over the States. Yeah. So coaching, you can see people across state lines. It's not like therapy where you have a license and you only license in certain states. So yeah, anyone in the States, really all over the world, if they needed specific sort of information regarding their state, I would either help them find it or set them up with resources, you know, to help them get that information. I make it very clear that I'm not, like most coaches, I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
And I'm also not a mental health profession in my coaching, you know, role. So as long as people are clear about that, then you can provide education around, like, you know, the state laws and or at least where to find that.
Right. And if people did want to find you, how would they go about doing that?
My website, or my Instagram. So I'm on Instagram quite often. And then my website is shrinkingdivorce.com.
Excellent. Good. We'll make sure we'll put that in the show notes.
You do great reels. I love
your
Instagram.
reels are
your feed is great. So keep it up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I do enjoy doing them. I never thought I would at my age, but I do.
They're great.
You know, I feel like it's fun when you come up with an idea and see, you know, people relate to it. And some of them fall flat and some of them don't, but that's part of like the experimenting and learning what resonates with people.
Yeah. It's like learning a new language, trying to figure out what works on social
media. I know.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I mean, it's just such a, you know, when I was never a social media person. It's only since starting my own coaching practice that I had to put myself out there and do this. And I never thought I would be doing reels at my age. But it's good because it's all part of, you know, learning how to speak to people and how to get in front of people. And again, another sort of coachy sort of thing or anecdote is that we kind of get scared of putting ourselves out there. But when you don't, you may have something important to say that there's just someone really needs to hear that. And if you don't put yourself out there, you're going to be, you know, you get that person, you're denying that person from what you have to say.
That's a nice way to think about it.
Really, and you're right? People, and you'll attract, or you'll sort of resonate with a specific kind of person, right?
You don't know who that person
and you don't know them. And maybe it's not everyone, and that's okay. And sort of accepting that, you know what, I only got 6 likes, but did those 6 people get impacted by what you had to say? Then that's a win. Even if it was 1, right? Then you've done your job and you can tick that box. Yeah, no, it's amazing.
Well, thank you for the work that you do.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming on and sharing your...
you guys. I really appreciate it. This has been wonderful to chat to you. And I love expanding my circle so I have people to refer to and whatnot.
Yes, if you meet some fellow Canadians, send them our way.
I definitely will. You have a great podcast. I love it. I love the name as well. It's so cute.
Thank you.
That was all Amanda. She's the clever one of the bunch.
Depends on the day. We take turns.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you so much.
Guys.
Well, take care. Thank you for joining us.
Have a good holiday and New Year.
Thank you. You as well. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
This episode was written and created by Alex Howard and Amanda Silver, produced, edited, and engineered by RTF Productions. Make sure to rate and review our show if you loved it, and give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you stream your podcast to stay up to date on all upcoming episodes. Thanks for listening, and go easy on us. We're not your ex.